All right, we had our Ashes of Creation live stream today, and let me tell you, there was a little bit of time in there today I was concerned. Intrepid Studios seemingly made a couple of 180-degree reversals on some organic game design, specifically when it comes to housing and citizenship, and they had made a change where you were no longer going to have housing to be a citizen. And right after the live stream, I jumped into a voice chat with Steven and I said, hey, this didn't go over too well with the community. Can we maybe get like some more, or can you talk more to us? And here's what I really respect about Intrepid and Steven. Within a couple of minutes after the end of the live stream, Steven jumped into the news channel and made a statement. Greetings, Ashes community. Today on stream, I made a slight inaccurate statement regarding citizenship and housing. It is being implemented for testing the way it was originally documented and will require housing ownership in a node before citizenship can be attained. So everything Steven said in the live stream about citizenship and housing, just wipe all that away, insert this little soundbite there, and you're good to go. Now, the thing I'm going to say that really impresses me about Steven is when he comes back with a I was wrong. He doesn't just come back with a I was wrong and here's how it's going to be. He comes back with just a little bit more, so you feel confident there really is a game design document written. And he comes back with a village will have 50 initial apartments, 8 cottages, and ample space in the zone of influence for freeholds. Then he talks about the mayor being able to build more stuff. This is really important to me. It's not that they make mistakes. It's that we know that they're not getting the questions ahead of time, so you're not getting pre-thought out, like really detailed pre-scripted answers. You're getting like live uncut answers from Jeff and Steven, so it's okay if they make a couple of mistakes. With that said, I want to take the opportunity to thank my community. I want to thank you right now, the viewer watching this video. I want to thank everybody who leaves comments and likes and who subscribes to this channel. You guys have built me up enough that I have that little bit of influence where I can grab Steven right away when things start to like really not connect and line up, and I was able to grab Steven, and not just one, but we had 2 clarifications from today's live stream. So thank you to all of you for doing that for me and helping me and giving me that influence. With that said, today's live stream's theme was definitely housing. Housing was the theme of the day, in node housing specifically. Now, if you're new to Ashes and you don't know all the different types of housing, there's a video up there in the upper right-hand corner. That's my introduction to housing. I am rebooting that series, bringing it up more current, and especially after today, I got a lot of stuff to put in there. They showed off this housing video, which brought us a lot of new details. Like, for example, all the people asking, can I have a little garden at my house? Yes, it's right there in the interface. We've always known that as a node grows, it's going to increase the size of the house you have. So you start with that cottage, and then as the node grows, and if it eventually hits stage 6, your cottage turns into a mansion. I mean, it goes up through different stages of housing. But we didn't know until today, you can turn that feature off. You can choose to keep a cottage right in the middle of town. I thought that was a pretty interesting twist. I also like the interface. It tells you like what you can do with your house. You see storage, you see furnishing. Your furnishing is going to be limited both by the number of items you can put in the property, but also by the decor level of the items. Now, I don't have any more information on decor items to give you, but I will say that's great news for crafters. The more robust your artisan system is, the stronger your player-driven economy is, and that's something we haven't seen in an MMO for a long time. If there's going to be decor items that require a lot of goods to be gathered, a lot of gatherables, that's going to keep the gatherers employed. It's going to keep the processors working. So that's a really good thing, and it doesn't require power creep. It doesn't require armor and weapons to do. It just requires crafting. So that really gives your crafters something else to do than make swords. I also heard Steven mention that houses may be pre-furnished to some level. One frustrating thing I've always found in games is when you go bankrupt buying your first house and then you don't even have enough money to afford a chair to sit in. So I'm actually interested in all of your opinions on pre-furnishing. Leave me a comment below. Should houses be pre-furnished? And if so, to what level? Completely furnished, a little bit furnished, not furnished at all? I want to know what you guys are thinking. With that said, I do want to remind you that in a siege, in a node siege, your house can be destroyed. If you aren't familiar with node sieges, there's the video for node sieges up there, give you a little bit of background. If your house is destroyed, you will get all your furniture back and your decor items, but your gatherables and your craftables in your storage, that becomes like the plunder for the invaders. We're going to talk about that a lot later when we get into the reboot of the Node Siege video, and that's not going to be until probably beta. I do want to point out that while we've been talking about in-node housing in this video today, we did get a couple of bits and pieces on freeholds. We learned today that freeholds cannot be sold. This is a reversal of a recent statement where all real estate could be sold, so freeholds are back to being not sellable. They did provide a good justification for that. They don't want people to be able to sell the results of their hard work. So I work really hard, I make my tavern a level 3. That would kind of be disruptive to the game balance if I could then sell you a leveled up experienced tavern. We also know that you cannot place your freehold anywhere that a point of interest might form. Now what I mean by that is if a dungeon might open up near a node, if the right combination of events happens, you can't put your freehold on where that dungeon might be, even if the dungeon isn't there today. With that said, I want to talk about some of the other things that came out of today's live stream. The Phoenix Initiative testing, this has already paid off like big profits. Jeff was talking about some collision issues that they only discovered when they added on the PI testers. They didn't notice this issue with just the in-house testers, but as you start adding more and more people into the testing, the system acts accordingly. I know the big thing is, I know you leaders of men and you braver of world package holders, you're like chomping at the bit to get into Alpha 1. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to get into Alpha 1 and I'm way at the back of the bus. I appreciate everybody being patient and kind of like not beating up Intrepid. It's crawl, walk, run. They got to add a few more people, do some testing, then add the leaders of men and do some testing, and then the bravers of world. The last thing we want is to just slam 10,000 Alpha 1 testers into the servers and then things break, Intrepid not be able to identify why things broke. So next up, I want to talk about the art. In every month we are treated to great art. In this month alone, I'm going to say I'm getting a little worried for the future of my Butter McMagey McMurder Hornet. This face is going to be going away soon. We're starting to get these better looking faces, and I know this is a big selling point for people. A lot of people have expressed that they want a lot of customization over their character. Intrepid has promised us a very robust character creator, and seeing this model, I'm gonna have to believe that. We also, each month, we get a little bit of armor stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of armor styles. I usually find like a cosmetic or a transmog I like, and I stay in the same thing for years. But I'm gonna say the armor is really coming along nicely. I was a little worried about all those neon colors until I understood that that's like the developer's palette to make stuff. I don't want people having access to the neon clown car like dyes and stuff. I don't want this to turn into WoW. But more than art, we're seeing other things being developed like the Ramstone Hauler. And I want to just say this right now. Shame on you, Steven. You forgot the name of the Ramstone Hauler. That's like forgetting the names of one of your kids. But with that said, people have said for years Intrepid is promising too many cosmetics with a monthly rotation. I don't think so. I mean, I think that they're developing things, and all of the things they develop are going to be multi-purpose. We've talked about that on my show before. I want to talk about this goblin, and come on, let's get the goblin some underwear, please. He's showing goblin butt. But yeah, he's in the T-pose, but this is a pretty fierce looking NPC. I think this looks a lot better than the NPCs and monsters we're accustomed to in modern games. And then the turtle, I mean, how do you hate a turtle? And I like those little colored sections of his shell. There's going to be an effect added to that later. They just didn't have that piece done. Now, before we move on, I am going to throw a shameless self-plug in here.
I notice Paradox Jahlon is happy about his interview that I'll be doing on July 8th. So I'll give you a little shout out, Jahlon.
There you go.
I am interviewing Steven on July 8th at 1300 Pacific. That is 1600 Eastern. If you have a question you want answered, put it in the comments below. I do not promise I will ask your question. I do not promise I will ask all of the questions. I will try to incorporate all of the questions and get us as much new information as I can. With that said, while you're waiting on other stuff to be answered, make sure you check out Ashes 101. I will be updating that a lot this weekend with all of this new information. But while we get there, we got a lot of stuff on combat today. People want to know if it's going to be active block and active dodge, like that iframe roll from Guild Wars 2. Right now, they've played with the the active shield block. They got a lot of data in Apocalypse, not Paladin's Might. I know a lot of people were talking about in the chat, well, nobody used Paladin's Might. This was actually when you were holding tab and blocking. They said not a lot of people used it. They want to make sure that active shield block and dodge would work not only against the action abilities, but since the game is hybrid, it has to engage with the stat system as well properly. And what Steven was talking about is the active dodge and the active block is going to show up more in the form of skill sets. So some classes are going to get movement rolls, some are going to get block buffs, some are going to get teleports, and that's really how you're going to see your active dodging and your repositioning through your skill sets, not through a extra like hit, shift, and roll. Again, all of the combat is in testing, so when we get into Alpha 1 and Alpha 2, make sure you're leaving good comments on your testing experience, or if you don't have access to the testing, leave comments on my testing experience, and when I'm streaming it, we'll talk about all the different bits of the action combat. Now, the big one I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the threat assessment system, and this is probably only the second thing in the entire reveals of Ashes of Creation that I'm not really excited about. I'm not excited about locked primary classes, and I've come to accept it, but I do not like that the threat assessment system is going to be you target a character and you see the armor that they're wearing and the tier of their armor based on their buff. This comes from Arcage, and I think this was a horribly implemented system. You see me walking down the path and I'm wearing a full robe cosmetic. I'm deliberately wearing that robe cosmetic because I'm wearing plate underneath, and you click on me and you're like, oh, it's a cleric in plate, I'm not going to fight that. Versus you click on me and it's like, oh, it's a cleric in robes, I'm gonna go kill that. I really need people to be vocal about the threat assessment system. You can talk about it today with what I've just told you, or when we're in alpha and beta and we're getting into it, make sure you're expressing your opinion for or against, so Intrepid really knows they're making a community-driven decision. With that said, a couple of the other cats and dogs out of the questions and answers today. Are there going to be ways to change events that make seasons longer and shorter? And they said yes, absolutely. There's going to be things that cause longer winters. There's going to be things that shorten the winters. There might be really permanently long seasons based on an ice dragon that is up and about and you just can't get out of winter. They don't want to reveal too much about those events because who wants to know everything we're going to face? Next up, somebody asked, movement-based attacks, back attacks, side attacks, and if you're backing up, will that increase your block and parry? We are going to have positional attacks, maybe not backing up and getting more block and parry, but you are going to get buffs from attack directions, especially if you're playing rogue. Somebody asked, do members of guilds have to be members of the same nodes to get the benefits? No, that would be node benefits. You get those guild benefits by being a member of the guild. They've talked about ley lines, and I love the concept of ley lines, and they aren't really ready to talk about like world ley lines yet. Again, why I like the fact that the questions aren't pre-scripted and previewed and you're getting a canned response. Steven started talking about the relics, and we saw the relics years ago in that Ashes of Creation preview with the rogue walking into the town, and his whole mission is to steal that relic so it can't be used. The mayors of nodes and the kings of the castles will have defense mechanism relics based on the achievements of their citizens, the achievements of their guild, how long they've held their castle, lots of different things. And when the mayor puts these down or the king puts these down, they create area buffs. So for example, you might have a relic placed down that increases your mage's damage or your archer's damage. And if you want to make sure that you're not facing a lot of extra damage, you might have to send your rogues in early and steal them or disrupt them or do whatever the mechanic is that we're going to find out later. Somebody asked about voice chat in game. Yes, they plan on having proximity chat in taverns, and then they plan on having party and raid chat. To me, this isn't a really big deal. I mean, it's convenient for pickup groups, but most people are going to be in their groups on their Discord. And I find that VOP over games usually makes the game lag. Hopefully Intrepid figures out a way to make it work well. It's been about 10 years since I've seen this done in a game, and last game I saw it was in Eve. Somebody asked, pre-sale cosmetics, are they going to look different on each race? So what you see in the monthly cash shop, slight variation across the races. Will mounts live forever? Yes, you do not have to worry about your favorite horse dying, with the exception of legendary mounts. Any flying mount has a lifespan. You might find a legendary egg out in the wild and you have a flying mount for 14 to 30 days. Or if you're a king, you have a mount for every king cycle. If you're a metropolis mayor, you have a flying mount for every mayor cycle. But the moment you are not holding the position that grants you the flying mount, your flying mount dies. Sorry. Last up, I asked, also, another design change, this one not as radical, was bounty hunters. Originally, only military nodes were going to offer the quest for bounty hunters. They're thinking about maybe making a change here that any node in an alliance with a military node will also have that quest, or any vassal nodes of a military node would be able to access that quest. We don't know a lot about the bounty hunter system, and we'll be getting more about that as we go. And then finally, the question I asked is, what happens if two guilds try to drop a guild siege flag at the same castle at the same time? And what Steven came back with during the stream was, well, the declaration flag doesn't apply to castle sieges. Go check the wiki. And I went to the wiki and I cut and pasted in the response and I said, well, we've had many conversations about guild declaration flags. And again, these are unscripted, unpreviewed questions. Steven was like, in voice chat with me, he's like, I'm gonna get back to you because my brain is mush. I said, that's cool, get back to me. He got back to me, and what it is that the guilds have to register to attack the castle, and that has to happen first. Once that happens, then they have to create a siege scroll that they need their master gatherer, their master processor, and their master craftsman to make that scroll. The first guild leader to drop the scroll controls the assault on the castle. The better the scroll that they make, the better the headquarters they have is, and the closer to the castle they begin their siege. Now, that headquarters that they place is an attackable objective for the defenders. If that is lost, they get pushed farther back. If you want to know what we know about castle sieges, there's a castle siege video up there. And again, that one's going to have to be updated now that we got some new information. But again, I really like the fact that Steven says something in the live stream and then we do a, hey, yeah, but, and then he goes back and checks the game design document and he says, okay, I got it. Now, I personally have said to Steven, I will follow you around like Bartholomew with the pirate's code. I will follow you around with the game design document. I just think he's afraid I'd read too much of it. And with that said, guys, that is the recap for today. As you can see, Ashes of Creation, Ashes 101. Make sure you're checking that out if you're new to Ashes. If you are brand new to Ashes of Creation, welcome to the community. Now hit pause, go into the description, find my referral code, and register for Ashes of Creation so you make sure that you get your mantelpiece. Intrepid is offering a free decorative item for our housing as a show of human support for the real world issues of COVID-19. I think that's really nice of Intrepid to do that. And that's the reason why the store cosmetics haven't changed, guys. I know a lot of you have been pinging me with, why are the same store cosmetics up? Is Intrepid in trouble? They're not changing. No, they're not changing. Steven doesn't feel right about changing the monthly cosmetics and milking people out of money if they're trying to decide, between eating and buying monthly cosmetics. He doesn't want to be the cause of people not eating. So he said, we're just going to wait on selling new cosmetics until the world is kind of back to normal and people get back to work. With that said, I've had audio and video issues all afternoon. I've had to cut this like 5 times. So we're going into post. We're getting this up. I will see you guys on the creative director letter review, which should be in 5 days. And then I'll see you on July 8th when Steven and I get in the ring and we box for an hour in Q&A. See you then. What are you still doing here? Nobody ever stays this long. This is the end screen. Well, since you're here, there's a couple other videos I think you should check out. And all those names, those are my patrons over at Patreon. I couldn't do this without them. So, big thanks to them for all their support.